In this video, I'm going to show you how to install this front leveling kit on this Ram 1500. Let's get into it. We're going to remove the wheel, use a 22mm socket, take the lug nuts off. And pull the wheel off. We're going to take the top nut off the sway bar link. Use a 15mm wrench. Put that on the link down below. Then use a 16mm socket. Take this off. There we go. And then you want to do the same on the other side. Using some side cutters, we'll take the cotter pin off. And slide that out. You want to throw that out, get a new one. Using a 21mm socket, take the nut off. You can try using a punch underneath the tie rod, give it a tap, or use some front end tools. Also, just giving it a tap right here. Just get it to separate. There we go, set that aside. Disconnect the ABS wire here, just use a trim tool. Disconnect the connector. There's a little lock tab right here. You want to push up on that. You can use a pick or the tool to just push it up. Push down, disconnect the connector. And the retainers, just pop those out right there. Sometimes they break. And then disconnect it right here, just so you don't put any tension on the ABS wire. We're going to take this nut off, use a 21mm socket. And just take this nut, just put it a couple turns at the base, and we're going to pop that free from the knuckle. If you have a special front end tool, you can use that, or just use a hammer and just give it a tap. That's loose now. Pull this down, pull the nut off, slide this off, and just slide this to the side. Just be careful of the brake hose. You don't want to put any tension on it, so make sure you twist it that way. Now I'm going to use a 21mm socket on the bolt. You could use a wrench if you want to, just to hold that from spinning. Then a 24mm socket to take the nut off. Take that nut off. Just pop this bolt out. Just in case, you might want to support underneath the control arm in case it drops down. When you take this bolt out, just use a punch. Now we're going to take these nuts off up top. I'm going to use a 15mm wrench. Loosen those up. And just using a pry bar, just going to pry the control arm down, pull the strut assembly out. Just watch out for the CV boot and just be careful of the brake hose. And it slides right out. Now take the spacer. It only goes on one way. If you try to put it on the other way, it's not gonna line up. So line it up with the correct studs. Put a washer on and a nut. Use a 17mm socket, get those all started. And we'll tighten those down. And with a punch or something you can prevent the strut assembly from spinning, I'm just going to put that through here. I'm going to torque the nuts to 40 foot-pounds. All right, that's good. Underneath the lower control arm, I am using a transmission jack to support it. You could just use a floor jack if you're working on the ground. Before we loosen the nuts on these bolts, we're just going to mark where these cams are so that we put it back together as close as possible, right there and right there. You're still going to need an alignment after you do this, but this will just help get it close. On the bolt, I'm going to use a 24mm wrench and a 24mm socket to take the nut off. Or just loosen it up. Just need the nut loose. Loosen that up a few turns. Now we'll just lower the support on the control arm. Try to swing that down some more. Just keep an eye on the brake hose. If you have to, you can pull the caliper off so the brake hose doesn't have any tension on it. Then take the strut. You want to slide this in the opposite way it came out so that the bolt holes are going to line up. Just pry the control arm down. All right, that's in. It's lined up. Raise up the control arm. Take the bolts. You want to get those started up top with the lock washers. You don't want to tighten these down yet. You just want them loose. Get them all started. Now you want to line up the hole with the bushing. And I'm just taking a screwdriver, just temporarily putting that in there. Get that to line up. And then you want to take the bolt, go in from the back side, and get it started. And you can put the nut on, get that started, but we're not going to tighten that down yet. We're going to tighten the bolts down up top. And we'll torque those bolts to 40 foot-pounds. Now you want to make sure the cams line up with your marks, and then we want to tighten these down. And we're going to torque these nuts to 155 foot-pounds. The same on the back. Snug that down. Now we're going to torque this bolt to 125 foot-pounds. Get the ball joint in place, line that up. Just use a pry bar. And get the nut started. Tighten that down. Now we're going to torque this to 40 foot-pounds. And if you have a torque angle meter, you can use that and go an additional 200 degrees. If not, do the best you can. Now we're going to lower the jack. Slide that out of the way. Take the tie rod in, slide that into the knuckle. Take the castle nut, put that on, get that started. I'm just going to use a pry bar, just pry down while I tighten up the nut. You want to torque this nut to 29 foot-pounds, and then you want to go an additional 90 degrees. If you have a torque angle meter, use that. If not, do the best you can. Then you want to take the new cotter pin, line up the hole. If it's not lined up, you want to just tighten the nut a little bit more until it does line up. You never want to loosen it. There we go. Slide that in. Using some side cutters, you want to bend the end. Bend that over. And then just trim the excess. Take the ABS wire or wheel speed sensor wire, reposition that. I'm just going to use a new retainer right here. Slide that in place. Secure that down. Connect the connector. Push down the lock. And push that retainer in. Put the bushing on. And the washer, then the upper nut. And tighten the top nut. And torque that to 16 foot-pounds. Good. Now put the wheel on. Get the lug nuts started. Snug those down. Now we're going to torque the lug nuts to 130 foot-pounds in a cross pattern to tighten the wheel down evenly. After finishing this installation, it's important to have an alignment done on your vehicle.
When only the best will do, demand TRQ. The only company that lets you view before you do. TRQ is committed to offering the highest quality aftermarket auto parts that are engineered for peace of mind. Thanks for using and viewing with TRQ.